Which games does she think are the best? The long ones, the short ones, simple, complex. What do you think for Ambie Valdez? Are all her favorite games 18XX? Let's see how well you guess.
Hi, I'm Ambie, and this is my top 100 favorite games as of the end of 2019. This is numbers 60 through 51. My number 60 is Trajan, which is a strategy game that has a Mancala-like mechanism. In Trajan, you're trying to get the most points. There's a bunch of different actions you can do that give you points, but basically you're trying to optimize your actions so that you get the most points because they build on each other. What's really interesting about the game is the way you do actions is like Mancala. You have a personal board that has the action spaces in a circle, and then you have little colorful pieces. So on your turn, you pick up all the pieces from one of the spaces and then drop them off one by one around the circle. Then the last space you land on is the action that you do. Also, you can sometimes get a bonus tile if the colors of the pieces on the space that you land on match the colors of the tile that's there. So there's a lot of planning ahead trying to do the actions that you want, because sometimes as you're playing the game, you won't be able to do an action next turn because of how the pieces are distributed around the circle. So I really like that Mancala mechanism and how it changes what actions you can do and how you have to really plan ahead to do the actions that you want to do. So that's why Trajan is my number 60. My number 59 is Clask, which is a two-player dexterity game, kind of like magnetic air hockey. So Clask is a tabletop board that's about this big, and you put it on the table, and it's kind of like air hockey. You're shooting a ball into someone else's goal, but the way you control your puck is a magnet. You have a magnet on the bottom, and then it has the puck on top, and you're moving it around under the board so that your puck on top moves around. There's also magnets in the middle that if you get close to them, they attach to your puck, and you lose a point if two of them attach to your puck. And the name of the game comes from your goal being indented in the board. So if you end up having your puck fall into that indent, it makes clask, that noise, I guess, and you lose a point for that too. So it's a really quick, fun dexterity game, kind of like air hockey, but one that you can play at home without a big air hockey table. So that's why I like Clask. My number 58 is The Pyramid's Deadline, which is a small game where you're building a pyramid and trying to get the most points based on the pyramid that you build. So in the game, there are dice that you roll that have different shapes on them, and then players take turns taking one die, and that's the shape that they get to build their pyramid. There are different rules that you have to follow to build the pyramid, but then at the end, once you have a complete pyramid that's valid, you get points based on how wide it is and how tall it is. But there's a timer in the game. There's a limited number of red pieces, so when those run out, the game ends. And if your pyramid isn't complete then you just score nothing. So it's really interesting because in addition to building the pyramid, you're also picking the dice that you want to use, and you can pick the pieces that make the game go faster or try to leave those pieces and make the game last longer so that you have more time to build your pyramid. So I like both that part of the players being somewhat in control of the timing of the game, and also I like building things. So that's why I like The Pyramid's Deadline. My number 57 is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which is a cooperative crime-solving game. The base game comes with 10 games, but there's also expansions and other games in the series that have more cases in them. The way the game works is that each case has a booklet with a bunch of passages in it that you can read, and there's also a directory and a map of London and newspapers. So the directory has a list of a bunch of people in it, and you can go to it, see what passage each person is, and go to that passage in the book to interview that person. The map also has a bunch of different locations, so if you follow along a route and want to go to a specific building, you can go there in the casebook if they have a passage for that building. So it's very open-ended. It's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure story, but without choices to give you. You just look through the directory and the newspaper to try to find leads. So I really like this type of game where you're solving crimes and investigating things. The base game that we played was an older version and had some misprints in it and typos that made some of the cases unsolvable, but I think the new versions have that fixed. So when there's a typo, it's like that, then it can ruin the case. But even with that, I still really like the game, and I have the expansions that I haven't played yet. My number 56 is Mysterium, which is a cooperative communication deduction game. So in Mysterium, one player plays as the ghost who was murdered and is trying to communicate to the rest of the players who murdered them, with what, and where. The way this is done is there's a bunch of cards that have pictures of the suspects, the locations, and the murder weapons on them. Those are the possibilities. And then the ghost has a hand of cards that have these surreal illustrations on them. The theme is the ghost is trying to communicate to the people through their dreams. So the ghost gives each person one or more cards that have these pictures on them, trying to point them to the murder suspect. Each person has a different murder suspect, but they can all work together to determine what each person's cards are pointing to. So I really like the idea of communicating through the cards that are abstract pictures, because when you get the cards, you're not sure what exactly it is that makes them give it to you. It could be like the color, or there's an animal on here, so it's similar to an animal on one of the suspect cards. And as one of the guessers, it's really fun just trying to figure out what the ghost means. And as the ghost, it's really fun just seeing how people misinterpret your clues. So that's why I really like Mysterium. My number 55 is Pit, which is a real-time trading card game. In Pit, you all have a hand of 9 cards, and there's different commodities in the deck. And so you're trading with other players trying to get all the same in your hand. The way you trade is you have a number of cards that you can trade, but they all have to be the same type. So if you have 2 of the same type, then you're saying, oh, 2, 2, 2. And everyone else who has 2 is also saying 2, 2, 2. And so you trade with one person who has 2. And this is all in real time, so it's very hectic and there's a lot of yelling. So as people are trading, eventually someone will get all 9 cards the same, and then they ring a bell that's in the middle of the table. And that means they won. So this is a game that definitely gets my throat hurting after playing it a while, but it's really hectic and really fun to play. My number 54 is Azul, which is a tile placing game. In Azul, you're getting different colored tiles and trying to fill up rows on your board in order to place them onto a mosaic wall that you have. And you score points by placing them next to other tiles that you've already placed because they accumulate over time. But I think the interesting part of Azul is the way you get the tiles. So in the game, there are piles of 4 tiles each that are in a circle around the center of the table. On your turn, you can take one color of tile from one of these piles, but you take all the tiles of that color, and then the rest of the tiles go into the center, and the center becomes a new pile. So as people keep going, the center gets bigger and bigger, and then someone can take the center ones, but they take all of the tiles of that color. So when you're playing, you can take tiles that other people want, which makes them sad, but also, as the round goes on, the center pile gets bigger and bigger. And on your board, when you're collecting tiles, if you have too many of one color, it overflows and you lose points for that. So at the end, people have to take what's left in the center, and it can be a lot of tiles and make them lose a lot of points. So that's really fun, just trying to make sure you don't get stuck with all those tiles and make sure someone else gets stuck with them. And that's why I like Azul. My number 53 is Ghost Stories, which is a cooperative game where you're trying to save a town from evil ghosts. The town is a grid of 9 tiles, and each tile has a different action that you can do. So you move your pawn to the different tiles, and then you can do the action there. But also, each player has a player board, and they're on the 4 sides of the town, and that's where ghosts appear. So also on your turn, you can try to attack a ghost instead of doing one of the town actions. You're basically trying to survive because ghosts keep coming every turn, and they start overflowing the town. And eventually, if they attack, then the town tiles get flipped over and you can't do those actions anymore. So it's pretty difficult. It seems like there's an endless stream of ghosts coming, and then at the end, you have to beat the big bad ghosts to win. And it doesn't matter about the other ghosts, you just have to beat that one. So I like this because there's a lot of planning and trying to defeat the ghosts and make sure that you don't lose, because there's a lot of ways you can lose before you win. And to defeat the ghosts, you roll dice, but there's also ways to mitigate that. You can collect things to defeat the ghosts, and then also ghosts have different powers, so you can choose which ghosts you're trying to attack because you want to make sure you're getting rid of the bad ones, and some of the easy ones you can not worry about until later. So there's always something you need to do to not lose, because you always feel like you're losing, and most of the times we do lose. But I really like that because I like challenging cooperative games. So that's why I like Ghost Stories. My My number 52 is Hail Hydra, which is a social deduction game that's kind of like a mix between The Resistance and Battlestar Galactica. So Hail Hydra is Marvel themed. Everyone's a different Marvel superhero and they're trying to defend the city against the bad guys. I'm not really a big Marvel fan, but I like social deduction games, which is why I like Hail Hydra. The way the game works is that everyone is a different superpower with a different power, but you also have a hidden identity. You're good or bad. And there's a villain that you're trying to collectively defeat. And you do this by playing cards from your hand. There's a deck of cards that have positive and negative numbers, and everyone has a hand of cards, and they play cards face down to the middle. Then those are shuffled, and then if the sum of all of them is positive, then you can do damage to the villain. You're allowed to say if you put in a good or a bad card, so then if people are saying that they all put in good cards and then there's negative cards in there, then you know that someone that put in cards is bad. So I really like that. I like how everyone gets to put in cards for each mission at the start. In future rounds, you can vote people to not be in missions, but those people still get to pass cards to other people to help out. Also, I like that each person has a special power, and those special powers can be good, but also have a downside to them. So if you're good, you want to use the special power and try to limit the downside. But if you're bad, you want to use the special power when there will be the downside, but then pretend that you were trying to make it just be good. I've only played Hail Hydra a couple of times, but I really enjoyed it. So that's why it's my number 52. My number 51 is the Shipwreck Arcana, which is a cooperative deduction game. In the game, there's a bag of tiles numbers 1 through 7, and each player has 2 tiles. On your turn, you play down one of your tiles, and the other players are trying to guess what your other tile is. But the way you play your tile is that there's these cards in the middle that have different rules in them. For example, both of my tiles are even, or my other tile is smaller than this one. So you play your tile down, and then other people can eliminate the numbers that your tile can't be, and then try to figure out what your tile is from that. And if it takes too many turns for people to guess, then there's a timer and you can lose the game. But I really like this deduction part, and it's really interesting that you have 2 tiles and you can actually end up playing the tile that people had information on, because sometimes the rules that are out there aren't possible to play the other tile. But you want to try to avoid that. So it's really fun just trying to figure out why someone played what they did and then trying to deduce what they have based on what they played. Some of my favorite types of games are deduction games and cooperative games, so having this together makes a game that I really like. So that was my numbers 60 through 51 favorite games. Stay tuned for the rest of the list, and thanks for watching!
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.